And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I'm Michael DeLon. Today, I am talking with Daniel Scola. And Daniel, first of all, thank you for being here and carving me into your calendar today.
Michael, thanks so much for having me. I've watched many of your podcasts and I'm excited to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. It's going to be a great conversation. So Daniel is an IP attorney who helps business owners protect your IP, your intellectual property. We're going to get deep into that because it's really, really an important area that I think, Daniel, a lot of business owners overlook. So I want to dive into that. But as we get there, tell me, how in the world did you get to doing what you do today?
It's an interesting question, actually. I've always been interested in science, and I was pretty good at science when I was younger. So, and science is in my family. So I went to college, and I majored in science. However, there was a huge artistic side to me, and I've been a musician since I've been very young, and actually have a lot of compositions that I've written. I still write music, and I wanted to somehow marry this artistic side with the science side, and I really didn't know how to do it. And IP, when I began, was certainly not something that was really on people's minds. I mean, it really was sort of the pocket protector kind of, person who, was sort of a little bit nerdy in the wall, sort of stayed behind things. And, and that wasn't really me. I was a little more into the, the people person type of thing. So I was working in a laboratory and I just didn't like it. This was, post-college.
Right.
And, my mom actually gave me this great advice. She said, well, there's such a thing called an IP attorney, and patent law is, I understand, pretty creative. Maybe you should try that. And all of a sudden the light bulb went off. Now, that's supposed to be a joke because everyone uses the light bulb for inventions, So I went in to look at this, and sure enough, I took the exams you have to take. They're specialized exams to be a patent attorney. It's in addition to the state bar, there's a federal bar you have to take. And I started, in a corporation, and in the patent department, it's very much of an apprentice situation. And from there, I developed an expertise in not just in patents, but also in brands protection, like that's the trademark side, also in copyrights, trade secrets. It's a whole plethora of different areas that IP protects. And, it's really the protection of ideas. And don't we all have ideas?
More than I know what to do with most of the time.
Yeah, so true. It's so true. And then the last part of that story is that when I was inside, they had training programs at that time inside corporations, which they really don't have anymore. It's the outside firms like the one I'm in that does the training now. However, back then, because you were trained inside, you also saw a lot of the interplay between the law firms and the corporate attorneys. And I realized that a lot of the corporate attorneys didn't understand the pressures and issues that the inside attorneys had. So I said, you know what? I think I have a good way of marketing this. I'm going to go into private practice and tell them I understand the internal mechanisms of the corporation. So I understand what your pressures are. I understand what you need to get, and I need to make you look good and protect your ideas. I can do that. And it worked really very well. I had no clients when I joined the firm. I'm the managing partner of the firm now. So it seems to be, something that worked for me. So that's basically how I got started. I love it. It's a great feeling.
It is so cool, and I got to just stop and applaud you because you actually have passion that exudes from you for what you do, and I think that is so important in business, that, and especially in, I mean, don't take any offense to this, Daniel. IP and patents, I mean, how boring could that be? But the way God's wired you, it brings life to you, and you smile, and I appreciate that. So
yeah.
Fascinating story. Thank you, Mom, right, for that great advice.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's talk about IP, trademarks, copyright, brand protection, all of that for a small business owner. What's the deal with all of that, and what should I be concerned about, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so important that you look at ideas as being a valuable asset. I mean, when the most important thing a company can do is to hire their people, right? Their people are such a great asset. But why? Because they have ideas. And the ideas are very, very good, and many times swept under the rug as being, well, somebody probably already thought of that. Or, it's really not that good. They do a self-evaluation. And that's actually probably not a good thing to do. It's really not, because the ideas are what drive the engines of this economy. It's all based on ideas. And if you don't protect the ideas, I mean, think about it like this. You have a home and you have a piece of land that your home is on. Okay, that's property. Well, that's a tangible piece of property. We call it intellectual property. Property is therefore a word. It can be, it's an asset. It could be licensed, it could be sold, it can be leveraged. It gives you a barrier to competition because it's a barrier for entry. So it is essentially drawing that fence, just like you draw it around your house, where it keeps others from coming into your land, which is your intellectual property. And if you think of it like that, your idea is encompassed in that. Very powerful, very powerful.
I love the picture of drawing a fence around your ideas to protect that. In our company, we have some very specific ways that we help our clients create their books, right? And we've protected those because they are unique to us. It is an asset that if I ever sell the company, it's valuable.
It is.
But business owners, I think, small business owners in particular, don't think about protecting. And I'm not sure why. It might be because it's too common. Well, what I do is common, but I always go back. One of my favorite examples in marketing is Dave Ramsey. And he has his 7 baby steps.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if he's trademarked that or not, but he's world famous for 7 baby steps.
Yeah. That
to me is a intellectual property idea that has set him apart from everybody else. So small business owners have formulas or processes. Can they trademark them, copyright them? Is that something to be protected?
There are. I mean, look, there's so many different ways of protecting ideas and protecting through intellectual property. Yeah, you can protect slogans. You can protect, your brand names. You've got copyright protection. Everything, even in computer programming, there's patent protection and there's copyright protection. It goes to all facets of engineering, chemistry, biotechnology, computer science. The kitchen gadgets. I mean, I think the idea is this, and people come up with something and they're excited to tell someone about it. So I have a little phrase I like to say: you have to tell to sell. Very true, but you have to protect to collect. If you don't protect it, no one is going to put their money in there. You're not going to collect and get revenue from your ideas because they're no longer yours. You've put them in the public domain, and competition can say, great idea, I'm going to do this, but I've got manufacturing already.
Yeah.
I've got sales force. I'm going to just beat you in the marketplace. Really tough. However, get some IP protection. So maybe you've got a patent on a process. Maybe you've got a patent on a product. Maybe you've got some brand protection that covers really a nice set of goods, or a good slogan that really attracts people. Or you've got an artistic expression like, okay, you can copyright books and music, everyone knows that, or recordings or art, but dance steps are protectable. I mean, all these expressions of ideas that can be reduced to some form of tangible, recognition can be protected. And, you have to use, many people contact me after the fact, and I can't always help them because they've given up their rights. And if they talk without confidentiality agreements in place, and you call them non-disclosure agreements,
right,
they will likely lose their rights. And when it comes to patent protection, particularly. And I will tell you, my own father, my dad, this is something that when I got later on in life, I was like, gee, I wish I knew what I knew now then. he had one of the first formulations for these artificial, you see artificial sinks now and bathtubs put in all over the place, right?
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're really, really easy to do. And well, this was many years ago. This was back in the early 70s. My dad came up with a formulation where it would look just like marble. And he went to a manufacturing place. And, back then he didn't really understand it. He had all these formulations, he showed them, and they said, well, we'll think about it. The next thing he knew, about a year and a half later, they were producing this stuff like you wouldn't believe. And he had no protection on it.
Yeah.
And, that's a real story that hits home
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah, because of all, not only the money that was lost there, but just the angst and
Yeah.
the feeling of being, in a sense, robbed, right? Because
Yeah.
I remember, I mean, I'm an idea generating factory, okay, and I've come up with about 8 multi-million-dollar ideas. How do I know? Because I have the idea, I don't do anything with it, and about a year later, I'm walking down the drugstore aisle, and I'm like, well, there it is.
Yes.
So somebody took it, they patented it, they whatever, but they're making money. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Taking the idea and getting some protection, if you're going to run with it and say, okay, here's what I need to do. And it's, I don't want to say it's an insurance policy because it's so much more than that, but because an insurance policy protects you, but it doesn't add value.
I agree. I
Okay.
agree.
But a trademark or a copyright protects and adds value to your business,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a piece of property. It truly is value. The product is the product, and that's great, or the process, or whatever the brand is that you're selling, or if you develop some formula. Yes, that's what you're going to sell. But the rights that go with that,
Yes.
they are the ones that they provide the fence so that others can walk up to that fence and say, wow, look at that. That's pretty cool. I wish I were inside that fence. How do I get there? Well, maybe I have to pay a license. Maybe I
Yeah.
have to wait till it's, maybe I have to just, think of something else. That's really true. It's I can tell you, there were some doctors a while ago from University of San Diego, and they were doing some very complex stuff. They were trying to figure out how to actually solve the problem of AFib, afibrillation of the heart, when your heart's
Right.
not beating in a typical rhythm, and
Right.
it goes really fast or really slow, or it's not normal, and it can cause all kinds of problems. So they spent about 10 years trying to come up with the algorithm that would allow them to be able to predict and diagnose, where does that actually start in the heart? What cells are starting this? And I mean, can you imagine? All right.
No.
And they developed this whole program and device which did that. And they came to me and I said, wow, this is going to be groundbreaking. And sure enough, they sold it for $500 million to a large pharmaceutical company. I mean, if they didn't have the patent protection, there were about 23 different due diligence calls where they were all saying, what does the patent protection look like?
Yeah.
How good is it?
Wow.
You can just see. I mean, and that's an example. That's a sophisticated example.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, but okay, so let's go non-sophisticated on a marketing standpoint, okay?
Yeah, sure.
So the first company that hit my mind, I don't know why, but when you and I were growing up, there was this company, probably nationwide. There were lots of plumbers in every city.
Mhm.
And then this one company, I'm sure they've patented and copyrighted it, right? Roto-Rooter. That's the name. Away go troubles down the drain. Roto-Rooter.
Yeah.
So, but they built a fence around that logo, that slogan, and it positioned them in the mind of the audience totally differently. So if I need my drain unclogged, who do I call? I call Roto-Rooter.
Absolutely. Fantastic marketing, all protected by trademark, and it just gives you an idea of how powerful it can be.
Yeah.
And you can combine them. You can combine good branding with inventions or copyright. You can combine these things, which is even more powerful.
Okay. So talk
Yeah.
about that. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Combining inventions and like I mean, the idea that came to me, and it was Nike shoes. They
Sure.
had a patent on the shoe, but then they brought in the Jordan Air, which I'm sure got copyrighted, right? And is that what you're kind of combining?
Yes, yes. You get on the product, you could have a patent on the product. You could have a trademark on the product. You can have trade dress on the product. It's a little different than trademark. It's kind of like, the way you made it look and feel, the different color combinations and all that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you remember, I'm trying to think of it, remember the Pink Panther movies?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Years ago. Yeah. So the Pink Panther was, it was this really cool character, that they used in front of the movie. And a company got, pink as, sort of like the pink, playing off the Pink Panther as their insulation. And for
Yes.
many years, that pink insulation meant that company.
Yes.
And they got that on trade dress, and they got, trademark protection there. I mean, you can't imagine, I'll give you an idea of another one that's interesting. And this is again in the trademark area, super glue.
Yeah.
I was actually on the ground floor, just a brand new fledgling attorney when superglue came up. And there was this really, innovative marketing guy. He came to me and he said, yeah, I guess he came to me because he couldn't, everybody else was busy because I was really so new, but I knew enough to say, gee, I don't know if you're going to be able to protect this, because super and glue, I mean, glue is, you're not going to protect glue. That's a noun. And super is kind of laudatory. It's just saying it's a really good noun, and good trademarks, they don't really describe what they do.
Mm-hmm.
They don't describe the product. They are fanciful, like, Tide. What is
Right.
Tide? Tide's a detergent, doesn't describe the product.
Yeah.
It might describe that foam that comes in when you see the Tide, because it makes sense.
Crazy.
That's a little different. See, that's the marketing thing. That's the nuance. So I said to him, I don't think super glue is a good mark for protection wise, but it's a great, mark for marketing. It's a great brand for marketing. He put $10 million into this. Sure enough, it was a big success, but we did not get the trademark as predicted. The patent office said, trademark office said at the time, no, it describes, it's too descriptive. You'll have to get some sales before we're going to believe this. So he then left the company, and guess what his company name was? Super Glue. He did listen to my advice, but he didn't know when he was with the company. But when he left, because he knew it wasn't protectable, we sued him. We lost. I mean, that's a typical, so you can see selection of trademarks and getting patent protection on your products they're so powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to believe in your idea. That's important. And if you do, then get some confidentiality agreements in place, then start to talk about it. And that's the tell, to sell, and protect, to collect. That's really the key. And don't think you can draft an NDA yourself. People take it off the internet and they say, this looks good. It's nice and broad. Actually, sometimes that's the worst one to use.
Yeah.
Get it specific to your facts. So
yeah, and that's so good, because so many business owners. I just came off of a call and we were talking about CRM systems, customer management system.
right.
And the first question, well, how much does that cost? I'm like, stop thinking that way. Think about the investment that system's going to have for your business long term. Same thing here. Don't go on the cheap. I mean, are you going to create your last will and testament on something out of the internet that you find on Google? Lord, I hope not.
I hope not too.
Same
Yes.
thing here.
Yeah.
If you have an idea that you think is going to be worth a few $100,000, maybe $1 million or more, don't you think it's worth a few hundred to protect it properly from the get-go?
Absolutely. I mean, like we have an international practice that we deal with entrepreneurials, mid-size, small size, multinational companies. And the one thing they all do well, if they're doing it right, is they get their IP in place early and before they disclose. It's so important. I don't care how you have to get some money, get it somehow and invest it then, because it's going to save you a lot later.
It will. And especially in the fast-paced tech world, we work with a couple of tech companies in creating their books and things. And what they're creating is ideas very specific. And they all, I mean, that's like one of the first things is protecting it. because
Yeah,
they know how fast somebody can look at that and go, oh, I can replicate that.
absolutely. Yeah, reverse engineering is a big problem and easy, and so much theft now because it's digital.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true.
So
Yeah,
you've got to look at everything that you're doing as a business owner in order to protect your business, to grow your business, but also to sell your business. If you're going to end up
yeah,
selling your business and exiting, it's worth so much more money when you have the proper protections of trademarks and copyrights and all of that,
yeah,
because that
yeah.
becomes an asset that increases the value of business. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct. Absolutely. And many investors won't even entertain certain areas unless there's some protection. They want to know that for their investment, there's some certainty, not an
Yes.
absolute, but some barrier that others who want to copy have to overcome. And maybe they can overcome it.
Yeah.
And that gives them a lot more comfort to put their money down. Yeah.
It is so good. Wow. Daniel, I really think you and I could talk for quite some time on all this because
Yeah,
it's super
sure.
intriguing to me. But I know there are a lot of my audience out there who they've heard of IP, they really don't understand it or why it's important to them. And I want to say thank you for opening this box to us and helping us understand how to I'm quoting you now, how to build a fence around your ideas.
Yes.
That
Yep.
is so important in business. And you might be a small business owner who's just starting. You might be a coach who's has a specific product or a process. Doesn't matter.
Right.
You need to reach out to Daniel, have a conversation, and he'll tell you. He's like, yeah, you can't do that one like super glue, but here's what you can do,
Mhm. Yeah.
and make sure you've got those protections in place. Any Before we wrap this up, any last minute thoughts, stories, anecdotes, anything like that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the biggest tip I can give you is one, just to believe in your idea and enough to take action. That's really important. People will sit on their ideas and they'll walk through the store, they'll see on television and or they'll hear in the newspaper or whatever, and they'll say, "Oh, I came up with that idea 20 years ago." Yeah, well, yeah, it was a great idea, you know.
Yes.
And number two, and make sure you get, a good non-disclosure agreement and talk to a professional about it. And
Yes.
then see what you can do about getting protection early, because if you do that, even if it's just a moderate amount and it's not completely developed, get it started,
Yes.
get your stake in the ground for that portion, and then investors will take you more seriously.
That is great advice. That right there was worth the price of admission. So make sure you do that. Make sure you go back and listen to all of this because Daniel, you dropped 3 or 4 little, I call them bombs, right? Little nuggets in here that we just glossed over. That each one of them could be a podcast, right? And that's why I always encourage my audience, because I mean, they're driving, they're exercising, they're doing lots of things. Go back and re-listen to this, read the transcript, and then reach out to Daniel and say, okay, here's my idea or whatever. And he's not going to steal your idea. He's going to protect your idea and guide you down that process of what is the best step. Do you need a copyright? Do you need a trademark? Do you need what do you need? Because I mean,
Mhm.
it's a massive world out there. And most of us only think in trademark and copyright. But I'm sure there are like probably a dozen other ways you help business owners really protect that, and it's so much faster, easier, and safer to work with an expert like Daniel, who's been doing this for a few years, helping small business owners up to multi-billion-dollar corporations protect their ideas, their property, so that they can be more profitable, serve more people. Fair?
Fair, absolutely,
How would
100%.
somebody, Daniel, when they're sitting there going, okay, I need an IP attorney, I need some advice, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, certainly I can be reached at the firm, website, which is Hoffman and Barron is the name of the firm, Hoffman and Barron LLP. We've got offices in New Jersey, New York, and DC. So it's hbiplaw.com, hbiplaw.com.
Got it.
That's the easiest way.
I like it. I will capture that. I'm going to put that in the show notes. So if you are exercising or driving, just go to the show notes. You'll be able to get that. You'll go right to the website. You can reach out to them and have the conversation, because if you have an idea, it might be worth a lot of money, and you need to have the proper protection around that. Daniel can help you do that. So let me encourage you
Absolutely.
to re-listen to this and then to reach out to Daniel and have that conversation to see how he can help you.
Sure.
Daniel, thank you. This has been really insightful and intriguing.
My pleasure, Michael. Thanks for having me on.
You are quite welcome.